date is January 30th, 2000. The place, the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. It had all come up to this. The final two teams in the NFL clashing for a ring, a title, and superiority for the 1999-2000 NFL season. We already know our combatants, the St. Louis Rams and the Tennessee Titans. One team seemed almost promised to get there. One of the most electric offenses the NFL has ever seen, even to this day. The other, though, had to rely on a few miracles, grit and grind, and claw their way up to the big game. For the majority of the decade, both of these two teams have been bottom feeders, but the script was flipped this night. Now they clashed for the title. As it was the 30th anniversary of Super Bowl IV, some of the biggest names from that game would oversee the coin toss. Bud Grant, Lamar Hunt, Bobby Bell, Willie Lanier, and Paul Krause were all present as the coin was flipped. The Rams would win and choose to receive the first half kickoff. With a 64-yard boot by Tennessee punter Craig Hentrich, the game was now on. Roll the intro.
I don't really have a good intro right now, but on this channel I like to talk sports.
Both teams, offensively speaking, would go into the game with the same game plans they had used for most of the season. For St. Louis, the goal was to have outside runs and screens with Marshall Faulk, set up deep passes down the field to all of their talent at the wide receiver position. The Titans, though, wanted to run the ball and run the ball some more. They would let Steve McNair and Eddie George do their thing while their big, bulky offensive line dominated up front. Once they had finished running the ball some more, they would then take shots off of play action, rollouts, bootlegs, all that good stuff. Even with all the firepower on both sides of the ball, this game would start out as a primarily defensive struggle. The Rams' first drive would stall out in 13 plays, 8 of which were called passes. They were trying to establish air superiority early and got all the way down to the Tennessee 29. However, on a 4th and long, the aforementioned 29-yard line of Tennessee, the Rams gave in. They would have to kick a field goal. However, on the try, punter/holder Mike Horan fumbled the snap, and Tennessee recovered. The score was still 0-0. Tennessee would drive down the field with the help of a neutral zone infraction penalty. However, they would stall out, this time ironically, on the St. Louis 29. On 4th and 13, Al DeGreco trotted out for a field goal and missed. The Rams headed back out on offense, and in 2 plays would gain 49 yards. However, Tennessee's defense stiffened up, they had bent, but they did not break. And despite all that perceived dominance early on in the drive, St. Louis would stall out again, being forced to kick a field goal. This one, however, sailed through the uprights with no issue. The score was now 3-0 Rams. This would lead into the second quarter, which would start out shaky for St. Louis. After another drive, 2 straight incomplete passes led to another field goal try. Their kicker, Jeff Wilkins, even with no real problems with the snap and hold, just missed it. There was no other way, he just missed it. However, even though Tennessee's defense was bending, but certainly not breaking, their offense was anemic. After another 4th and out for Tennessee, the Rams would march down the field again and score another field goal, making it 6-0 with about half of the second quarter remaining. The Titans went nowhere again. St. Louis got the ball back again and would go on another long drive, and with 19 seconds left in the first half, kick their 3rd field goal, making the score 9-0. With the Titans receiving the second half kickoff, they would go on a fairly nice drive, march down all the way into field goal range, and kick. However, this kick would be blocked by Rams defensive back Todd Light. The Rams would open up the passing game early with several quick strikes to get them down the field before scoring the first touchdown of the game on a 9-yard pass to Torrey Holt. The score was now 16-0 St. Louis. The Titans, though, did not panic. They had in fact gone and stayed with what had worked for them all year. They would run the ball with Eddie George and set up the bootlegs with McNair, where he was always a threat to take off. In fact, that's what set up Tennessee's first touchdown of the game, after a 23-yard run by McNair set up a 1-yard score from Eddie George. However, something very, very important would happen. Between the 23-yard McNair run and the 1-yard score from Eddie George, the Titans had to burn a timeout to avoid taking a delay of game. This would become very, very important later on. But they still had 6 points on the board. Only 6, actually, as they would attempt a 2-point conversion and fail. Score was now 16-6. Rams still led. On the next Rams drive, they would go 3 and out and punt. The Titans would get all the way down the field and score another Eddie George 1-yard touchdown. But again, they would have to burn another timeout to avoid taking a delay of game. At the end of the third quarter, the score was still 16-6, but there were definitely stirrings in the field. The first drive of the fourth quarter for the Rams would end in a 3 and out. The Titans would march all the way down the field and score their second touchdown of the night. Critically though, they were forced to burn another timeout to avoid taking a delay of game penalty. Al DeGreco's extra point sailed through, and the score was now 16-13. The momentum swing was immediate and complete, as the Rams would stall out on their next drive as well. The Titans would get the ball back, get down into field goal range, and Al DeGreco's kick would be straight and true. 16-16. At this point, there were only 2 minutes and 41 seconds left in the fourth. It had all led up to this. Kurt Warner, former grocery bagger, arena leaguer, and third stringer, had 2 minutes and 41 seconds for NFL immortality. The game-winning drive in the Super Bowl. And if you got all hyped about what comes next, I hate to disappoint you, but on the first play of scrimmage, he threw a 73-yard touchdown to Isaac Bruce. Somewhat anticlimactic, I know, but after the extra point went through, with only 2 minutes left to go in the game, the Rams now had a 23-16 advantage, a 7-point lead. The Titans' passing game had been suspect all day. They had gotten their points off of running the ball still. However, this was no time to run the ball. 2 minutes left, with 7 points needed to get you to even tie the game. And even worse, due to a holding penalty on the kickoff, the Titans now had to start on their own 10-yard line. But what happened next would lead to one of the greatest moments in NFL history. Steve McNair would start out with 2 quick completions. Then, after a pass to Kevin Dyson fell incomplete, a 12-yard scramble from McNair with 15 yards with a face mask tacked onto it would get the Titans 27 yards in one play. After several more passes and getting out of bounds to stop the clock, the Titans were knocking on the door. With only 22 seconds in the game, the Titans were now positioned on the Rams' 26-yard line. They were in scoring range, and in fact, everyone thought this would be leading up to the first ever overtime in Super Bowl history. The Titans had clawed their way back from being down 16-0 against one of the greatest offenses in NFL history. They had no right to even be at this point, if we're being honest, with all the miracles they had to pull off to even get to the Super Bowl. But here they were. Well, now, here's something that I find is the most pertinent example of a term I like to call the play before here. And this is applicable to all sports, where the legendary moment overshadows the insane thing that happened one play before. And I think it's best if I just let this one roll. Steve McNair had delivered. He had been so-so all game, but had stepped up when it mattered the most. There were 5 seconds left in the game. You know, a quick tangent, actually. I actually watched this game in full as a part of my research for this series. The NFL did this thing that they stopped doing where they would sometimes upload full ad-free Super Bowls. They did it in like 2015 or 2016, and then they just kind of stopped because I think they realized they can't make enough money off of it. But I didn't expect this to happen because I already knew about the outcome of this game. I was invested. I was very invested. There was times I was at the edge of my seat, even though this wasn't even the actual Super Bowl. I was watching it on my couch in the middle of the day. And it got me excited. And then I began to feel something, almost a little pain in my chest when we got to this point. Because I knew just how it ends. There are very few Hollywood endings in sports in general. And there would not be one here. On the 9-yard line, the St. Louis Rams, the Titans got set and ran their play, trying to find Kevin Dyson open for some yards after catch opportunity. It was over. Just like that. Mike Jones, with one of the clutchest tackles in NFL history, had just won the Super Bowl. 9 yards were needed, 8 were gained. The Rams would be Super Bowl champions. Kurt Warner would be named Super Bowl MVP, with a then Super Bowl record 414 passing yards, along with 2 touchdowns in the game. He also attempted 45 passes without an interception that year, which was also a Super Bowl record. Warner is still the most recent player to win both the regular season MVP and Super Bowl MVP. The Rams were now kings of the NFL. And now, it's time for, in fact, the aftermath of this game. For both teams, in fact. For the Rams, the impact felt after they won the Super Bowl would be immediate and shocking. For the second time in his coaching career, Dick Vermeil would retire after a Super Bowl. This time, though, he would go out a champion. I mean, he would come back a third time, but we're not getting into that this video. Okay. The heir apparent for this team would be their offensive coordinator, Mike Martz. And in the first year with a Vermeilist team, the Rams would go 10-6. Marshall Faulk would win MVP in 2000, but they would still get bounced in the first round, 31-28 by the New Orleans Saints. The next year, 2001, the Rams would see a return to their elite form. They would go 14-2. The offense somehow breaking more records than the 1999 one already did, and with a defense much improved after hiring Lovie Smith from Tampa Bay to be their new defensive coordinator. The Rams would make it all the way back to the Super Bowl, but then, in a shocking upset, lose on a last-second field goal from Adam Vinatieri of the New England Patriots. The Rams were the sacrifice that started a dynasty that would rule the NFL with an iron fist for 20 years. In 2002, they would go 7-9 and miss the playoffs. In 2003, they would go 12-4, get a first-round bye, but then be bounced out by Carolina. Then, by 2004, Kurt Warner was gone. A string of injuries and poor performances had led to the Rams cutting him. Then, just a short 1 year later, Marshall Faulk would be gone as well. Over the last few years, Faulk had been suffering through injury issues and aging. He was now at the point where he was simply splitting carries with the team's new young bull, Steven Jackson, in the backfield. In 2005, Faulk would be out for most of the year with a knee injury. The team announced that he would miss the entirety of 2006 to have reconstructive surgery on his knees. For the entirety of 2006, Faulk would be an analyst for NFL Network. And then, on March 26, 2007, Marshall Faulk announced his retirement from football. The Rams were over. The last remnants of the Super Bowl team began to fade away. Titans, on the other hand, their story was far different, but much the same in many ways. In 2000, they would only be one of 8 teams in NFL history to make the playoffs after losing in the Super Bowl the previous season. Tennessee dominated the regular season, finishing 13-3 and the first seed in the AFC. However, they would lose their one and only playoff game to another legendary squad, the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. In 2001, they would go 7-9 and miss the playoffs. In 2002, they would go 11-5, beat the Steelers in the divisional round of the playoffs, but then lose in the AFC Championship to eventual Super Bowl runner-up Oakland Raiders. In 2003, the Titans would go 12-4 and make the playoffs again. However, in one of the strangest moves in NFL history, Steve McNair was named co-MVP that season, along with arch-division rival Peyton Manning of the Indianapolis Colts. If you want me to do a whole video on that, just say something. I probably will anyways, because that was a strange moment that there's been nothing like that in NFL history. In 2003, the Titans would win in the wild card, but then lose to the Patriots in the divisional. 2003 would also mark the final year Eddie George was on the team. After years of declining production, even with him being relatively healthy, he would be gone from the team, to sign with the Cowboys to finish out his NFL career. Then, a short 2 years later, Steve McNair would be gone as well, traded to the Baltimore Ravens. Both teams at this point were done. The last remnants of the Super Bowl had faded away. The miracles that the Titans had got to get there, the absolute dominance of the Rams offense that they had got to get there, it was all gone. Both teams would sink back to being a combination of mediocre and terrible. And for both franchises, surprisingly, this was probably one of their peaks. The Rams, of course, they've made a Super Bowl in the following years. They've made 2, in fact, of course, counting the one in 2017, but they've lost both. This remains the Rams' only victory as a franchise. And heck, it remains Tennessee's only trip to the big game. But even still, I think I find it worth mentioning that when Tennessee got back after losing in the Super Bowl, they were given a hero's welcome by Nashville. This was a team that had recently moved to a new city. This was a team that had been bad for so long, had been homeless for a while, and now they had legitimized themselves. Nashville had been legitimized as a football city. This was their team. They were no longer the remnants of the Houston Oilers. After 1999, they would and would be, forever and always, the Tennessee Titans. And I'd like to thank you for watching, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. I had no ending written down, so I'm sorry if it seemed a little disjointed, but this one kicked my ass, if we're being honest here. I gotta collect footage now, I gotta edit, all that good stuff, and doing the research for these kind of series are fun, but I think I'm gonna do more. This is gonna be a more situational, once in a blue moon type of thing, because these things are a doozy. And with that, I'm signing off for now. Hope to see you in the next one, once I figure out what the next one's about. Deuces.